Why did they laugh when she spoke the truth? She stood in the corner of the classroom, shoulders tight beneath a hoodie that was just a little too big, her notebook clutched to her chest like a shield. The history teacher had asked about role models, who they looked up to, who they thought defined courage. Some kids said athletes, some mentioned actors. One boy muttered his older brother in the Marines. She had waited until the end, heart pounding, fingers numb. And then she said it. My mom, she was a Navy SEAL. The room froze for a half-beat, then cracked open with snickers. Chairs scraped, whispers hissed. Someone in the back muttered loud enough for all to hear, "Yeah, right, they don't even let women be SEALs." Another chimed in, "Stop lying just to sound cool." Her face burned. She opened her mouth to argue, but the laughter drowned her out. The teacher didn't correct anyone, didn't defend her. He just moved on as if she hadn't spoken at all. And so the lie, the one she never told, stuck to her skin like mud. At lunch it got worse. A tray tipped near her, soda spilling across her notebook. She heard it again and again, liar, faker, wannabe. She swallowed the hurt, said nothing, because what could she say? She couldn't tell them the whole truth. Not yet. But there was something else inside her, something quiet, coiled, unyielding. It was the voice she carried from her mother's lessons. Never shouted, never proud, just firm and steady. Strength isn't what they see. It's what you hold when no one believes in you. That night she went home in silence. Her mother was in the kitchen, hair tied back, sleeves rolled, not in uniform but in plain clothes, cooking like any other parent. To the world she was ordinary. To her daughter she was steel wrapped in calm. The girl dropped her bag, muttered a hello, and tried to slip past without showing the day's wounds. But her mother noticed. She always noticed. "They didn't believe you again, did they?" Her mother's voice was low, steady, not asking out of ignorance but out of knowing. The girl froze back to her, throat tight. "They laughed, said women can't be SEALs, said I made it up." A pause, only the faint hiss of the pan on the stove. Then her mother's reply, "You don't need them to believe." But the words, wise as they were, couldn't fully stitch the cuts. "It's not fair," the girl whispered, finally turning. "You did it, you lived it, but I can't even say it without sounding crazy." Her mother met her eyes, and there was a weight there, a gravity carved from nights no one else had witnessed. She wiped her hands, stepped closer, and for a moment the kitchen light caught the faint scar along her forearm, the one story her daughter didn't know yet. "Fair doesn't matter," she said softly. "Truth does, and truth doesn't need applause." The girl blinked back tears, nodded, but inside the ache lingered. She wanted proof, wanted something undeniable that would silence the laughter once and for all. She didn't know that proof was coming sooner and harder than she could ever imagine. Days bled into weeks. The whispers never stopped. Sometimes she almost believed them herself. Almost. But every time her mother's presence pulled her back. The way she woke before dawn without fail. The way her posture never bent, even doing the smallest chores. The way she scanned every room without seeming to, eyes measuring exits, corners, shadows. Ordinary people didn't move like that. Ordinary people didn't carry silence like a weapon. Still, none of it mattered to the kids at school. To them, she was just the liar, the girl with stories bigger than reality. Then came that afternoon. It began like any other, drone of lectures, shuffle of papers, the hum of fluorescent lights. But beneath it, something felt off. The teachers seemed restless. An announcement buzzed over the intercom, vague words about a drill, but the tension in the adults' voices betrayed them. A couple of students joked about lockdowns. Nobody took it seriously. Not yet. She sat at her desk, tapping her pencil, trying to ignore the stares, when the first sound cracked through the hall. Boots. Not sneakers, not the shuffle of students. Heavy, deliberate, synchronized. The classroom door slammed open. Shadows filled the frame. Figures in full tactical gear stormed inside. Helmets, rifles, vests marked with insignia most had only seen in movies. Voices sharp, commands crisp, cutting through the air. The room froze, mouths hung open. Desks rattled as students shrank back. Fear spread fast, wide-eyed and breathless. But she didn't move. Her heart hammered, yes, but somewhere deep inside, she knew that cadence, that precision. She had heard it in stories, in subtle memories her mother never fully told but always carried. The lead operator scanned the room. Then, without hesitation, he spoke a single name. Her mother. The silence shattered. Dozens of eyes whipped toward her. She felt the weight of disbelief melting into something else: shock, confusion, fear. The very kids who had laughed now stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. She swallowed hard, because in that instant, everything she had carried in secret was no longer hidden. The truth had walked through the door, boots and rifles and all. And the question that filled every mind, every racing heart, was the same. Who exactly was her mother? The operators moved fast, precise, securing the room, checking windows, corners. The students sat frozen, still unsure if this was real or staged. But the steel in the men's eyes told the girl everything she needed to know. This was no drill. And as the soldiers formed their perimeter, as the teacher stammered useless questions, she felt something shift inside her. The laughter of weeks past still echoed faintly, but it no longer pierced. The room was silent now, silent and watching, and for the first time she didn't feel like the liar. She felt like the daughter of someone the world had yet to understand. The mystery was no longer hers alone. And yet, as the men exchanged coded words over radios, as the tension thickened, one truth whispered in the back of her mind. If her mother's past had come crashing into this quiet place, then it meant danger wasn't far behind. And this was only the beginning. Why did the soldiers know her mother's name? That question burned in her chest as the operators moved through the classroom with methodical precision. They weren't there for show. Their movements were too sharp, too exact. One checked the windows. Another stood by the door, rifle raised, posture coiled tight. The lead operator, visor lifted just enough to reveal hard eyes, spoke again, this time to the teacher, who looked as pale as chalk. "Is she here?" The teacher stammered, confused. "Who?" The operator's jaw tightened. "Sarah Donovan, former Chief Petty Officer, Navy SEAL." The name fell heavy. The girl's breath caught. Sarah Donovan, her mother, not just mom. Not just the quiet woman who cooked dinner, folded laundry, and kissed her forehead before bed. No, the title that had been denied, ridiculed, laughed out of existence by her classmates now echoed from the mouth of a man in combat gear. The silence cracked with whispers. Students stared, heads swiveling toward her like magnets. The liar, the joke, the girl with impossible stories. She felt heat rise in her cheeks but didn't flinch. Not this time. The teacher blinked, fumbling for composure. There's no one here by that name." The operator's gaze swept the room, landing squarely on her. And in that instant she knew he saw it, the resemblance. The sharpness of her mother's eyes carried faintly in hers. The same steady line of the jaw, the look of someone who had learned to wait, to endure. He gave a curt nod, "Copy that." Then into his radio, "Falcon confirmed, daughter located." The code name hit like lightning. Falcon. She had heard it once years ago, whispered from her mother's lips in a rare slip of memory. She hadn't understood it then. Now the words sliced through every doubt. Students gaped. Some mouths hung open. The boy who had mocked her the loudest sat slack-jawed, as if the ground beneath him had shifted. She wanted to drink in their shock, to savor the moment of vindication. But fear pressed down harder. If the SEALs had come here, if they had spoken her mother's name, it meant danger was near, closer than anyone realized. The operator leaned in, voice lowered, urgent. "Where is she?" Her throat tightened. She thought of her mother at home, probably still at the stove, unaware, or worse, already moving because she had known this was coming. Sarah Donovan didn't live blind. She always sensed storms before they broke. The girl forced herself to answer, "At home, a few miles from here." The operator's eyes narrowed, measuring her words. He gave a signal, quick and sharp. Two men peeled from the squad, heading back into the hall. The others stayed, guarding, waiting. The teacher finally found his voice. "What is happening? Why are you armed in my classroom?" The operator didn't answer. He was already scanning the windows again, jaw clenched. Something heavy pulsed in the air, something the students couldn't name but felt in their bones. The girl sat stiff, pulse pounding. She thought of the scar on her mother's arm, the unspoken stories, the endless discipline in her routines. And now, watching hardened soldiers treat her mother's name with reverence, she realized her mother hadn't just served, she had led. She had carved something in the world that left men like these moving at her signal years after she'd left it behind. But why now? Why here? The operator checked his watch. "We hold until Falcon arrives. Nobody leaves this room." Falcon arrives. Her breath caught. Her mother was coming here. The students looked around in disbelief, whispers multiplying. A girl leaned over wide-eyed. "Wait, so you weren't lying?" The question stung, not because it doubted, but because it revealed how deep their disbelief had always been. She didn't answer. Her silence said enough. Minutes stretched like hours. The hum of fluorescent lights filled the room, punctured by the occasional squawk of radios. The operators stood like statues, every sense alert. The students shifted nervously, trapped between fear and awe. And then it happened. Boots again. Not many, just one set. Heavy, steady, unhurried. A presence that didn't need numbers to command silence. The operators straightened. The lead man lowered his rifle slightly, as if acknowledging something higher than rank. The door opened. And there she was. Her mother, Sarah Donovan. No uniform, no insignia, just dark jeans, boots, a jacket pulled over a plain shirt. But the room changed the instant she stepped inside. The air thickened. The students' chatter died mid-breath. Even the teacher fell silent, words dying in his throat. Her mother's eyes swept the room, calm but sharp, taking everything in. She didn't need to raise her voice. "Status." The lead operator answered crisply. "Secured. Threat perimeter still unclear. Extraction recommended." Her mother nodded once, nothing more. She crossed the room, her steps measured, and stopped before her daughter's desk. For a fleeting moment, all the layers fell away, the soldier, the operative, the legend. She was just a mother looking at her child. "You okay?" The girl swallowed hard, nodded. Her throat was too tight for words. Behind them, whispers spread like wildfire. She knows them. They know her. The impossible was unfolding before their eyes, tearing apart every certainty they had clung to. But her mother didn't look at them. She kept her focus narrow, precise. "We're leaving," she told the operator. He nodded, relayed the order. The seals shifted, forming a protective arc. The students pressed back against walls and desks, stunned into silence. The girl rose, legs trembling but moving. Her mother's hand brushed her shoulder, steady, grounding, firm. And in that single touch, the chaos around her dimmed. She realized something then. Vindication wasn't the point. This wasn't about silencing laughter or proving doubters wrong. This was about survival, about shadows her mother had lived in for years now reaching into daylight. And as they stepped into the hall, flanked by soldiers, the weight of the moment settled deeper. Her life had just split in two, before this day and after. And the truth, the whole truth, was only beginning to surface. Why did her mother never tell her the whole truth? The question throbbed in her chest as the soldiers moved her down the hall, their boots pounding in rhythm with her racing heart. The school behind them was frozen, students glued to windows, teachers whispering in confusion, the echo of disbelief chasing her with every step. She had wished for proof once, proof to silence the laughter, but not like this. Not with rifles and tactical vests and radios buzzing with coded warnings. Her mother walked just ahead, calm, steady, every line of her body speaking a language her daughter barely understood. Sarah Donovan didn't look rattled. She didn't even look rushed. If anything, she looked resolved. The girl wanted to ask 1,000 questions, wanted to demand why she had been left in the dark. But the soldier's presence swallowed her words. They moved with urgency, shielding her on both sides, scanning corners like predators expecting danger. At the main doors, sunlight flared off armored vehicles parked at sharp angles. Their engines hummed, heavy and impatient. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't theater. Something real, something dangerous, had followed her mother's past back into their lives. The lead operator opened the door wide. Heat and dust spilled in. "Secure transport, let's move." Her mother placed a hand at her back. "Stay close." The girl nodded, though her throat was dry, her legs stiff. She climbed into the armored truck, the smell of oil and canvas sharp in her nose. Inside, the seats were hard, the air cramped. Radios hissed, voices barked, every sound thrumming with urgency. Her mother slid in across from her, meeting her gaze at last. For a moment, the world shrank to just the two of them. "You have questions." Her mother's voice was low, not apologetic, not defensive, just honest. The girl swallowed hard. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me who you were?" A pause. The truck lurched into motion, the roar of the engine filling the silence between them. Sarah held her daughter's eyes, calm, steady. "Because I wanted you to have a childhood I never had. Because names like mine don't come without shadows, and shadows cling." The girl bit her lip. Pride and anger wrestled inside her chest. "They laughed at me. Every time I said it, they laughed." Her mother's gaze softened just slightly. "And yet you still said it. That takes strength." The girl looked away, blinking hard. She wanted to feel proud, wanted to bask in the truth finally breaking through the lies, but fear gnawed deeper. If her mother's past was real, if all of this was real, then what else had been buried? What kind of enemies came with it? The operator seated near the door interrupted the silence. "We've got chatter. Movement 2 clicks south. Looks like they know." Her mother's head lifted sharp. "They're here already." "Affirmative." The girl stared, heart pounding. Who's here?" No one answered immediately. The operator checked his rifle, his jaw set. Her mother leaned forward, voice even but heavy. "Men I once crossed, people who don't forgive. They shouldn't know where we are, but they do." The girl felt the floor drop beneath her. "Because of me." Her mother shook her head firmly. "No, because of me, never you." The truck jolted hard as it turned. The girl grabbed the seat for balance, but her mother didn't even flinch. Sarah Donovan sat steady, like she'd been thrown harder 100 times before. The operator spoke into his radio, rapid-fire words she couldn't follow. The air grew thicker, louder. The hum of tension pressed against her ears. Finally, she couldn't hold back. "Mom, who are you really?" Her mother exhaled slowly. Then, for the first time, she didn't deflect, didn't soften the truth. "I was part of a team the world said didn't exist. Missions erased from records. Places I can't tell you about, battles I shouldn't have survived. For years, I lived where silence was the only shield. And then, when it ended, I tried to walk away." The girl's eyes stung. "But you didn't walk far enough." Sarah's gaze lingered on her, quiet, piercing. "No, I didn't." The vehicle braked hard, shouts outside. The driver's voice over comms, "Perimeter compromised, they're here." Chaos snapped into motion. The soldiers inside leapt up, rifles ready. The girl froze, pulse racing so fast she couldn't breathe. Her mother grabbed her hand, not gently but firmly, anchoring her. "Listen to me. Do not move unless I tell you. Do you understand?" She nodded, trembling. The back doors slammed open. Sunlight poured in, along with the deafening crack of gunfire. The soldiers spilled out, forming cover, returning fire in sharp bursts. The sound shook her bones. Shouts, commands, the hiss of radios, all folding into one chaotic storm. Her mother stayed low, pulling her close, shielded behind the heavy steel wall of the truck. The girl pressed her palms to her ears, but the noise still ripped through. She looked up at her mother, calm, focused, unflinching, and in that moment she saw something terrifying and awe-inspiring all at once. Sarah Donovan wasn't just her mother. She was Falcon, the same Falcon whispered with reverence by the men at school, the same Falcon who now moved like the years had never passed, like the shadows had been waiting for her return. The firefight raged outside, dust and smoke curling into the sunlight. Her mother reached for a sidearm tucked beneath her jacket. She checked the chamber, movements quick, precise. The girl's chest tightened. "You said you walked away." Her mother's eyes flicked to hers, steady, resolute. "I did, but sometimes the past walks back." And with that, she slid from the truck into the firestorm, leaving her daughter behind with only the echo of a single truth. Her mother had never really left the fight. And now neither could she. Why didn't fear touch her the way it touched everyone else? Gunfire tore through the air, brutal and unrelenting. The earth shook with every crack. Dust exploded from the ground, metal pinged as rounds struck the truck's armor. The girl huddled in the shadows of the cabin, trembling, unable to block the chaos with her hands pressed tight against her ears. But when she looked out, when she saw her mother step into the storm, she couldn't comprehend the calm that surrounded her. Sarah Donovan moved like water through fire, smooth, precise, unhurried. She crouched low, sighted her pistol, squeezed off 2 shots measured, not frantic. One man dropped. Another staggered, rifle slipping from his grip. Her daughter's stomach lurched. She had never seen this side of her mother, never seen violence coil so close to grace. Sarah wasn't wild. She wasn't reckless. She was controlled, as if every heartbeat obeyed her command. The SEALs pressed forward, shouts cutting sharp through the air. Left flank pushed them back. "Contact rooftop 3 o'clock. Her mother's voice slid between them, low and steady, carrying weight beyond rank. "Hold perimeter. 2 teams cross cover." No hesitation. They obeyed instantly, shifting formation around her words like orbit around gravity. And then the girl understood. It wasn't just respect. It wasn't just recognition. These men didn't see her as someone who used to lead. They saw her as someone who still did. But the fight was brutal. More gunfire thundered. Bullets tore into walls, into asphalt, into everything solid. One SEAL went down hard, a cry ripping from his throat as he clutched his shoulder. Another dragged him back, shouting for cover. The girl flinched at every sound. Her lungs burned with shallow breaths. She wanted to scream for it to stop. But through the haze, she saw her mother drop to one knee, fire 2 more shots, then shift to pull the wounded man closer with one hand, covering his body with her own. The soldier groaned, pale. Sarah pressed her hand against the wound, her voice calm even as the fight raged. "You'll make it. Stay with me." Her daughter's chest ached. How could anyone be that steady while death clawed inches away? The operator nearest the truck shouted into his radio, "We're outnumbered. Need extraction now." Static answered, no reply. Sarah cursed under her breath, eyes narrowing. She glanced back at the truck, at her daughter. Their eyes met across the smoke, the screams, the chaos. For the first time, Sarah's mask cracked. A flicker of something human, fragile fear, but not for herself, for her. Then it was gone. She turned back, firing again, commanding again, the Falcon awake and unyielding. The firefight dragged on. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes into something timeless, unbearable. The girl's nails dug crescents into her palms. She wanted to close her eyes to block it out. But she couldn't look away from her mother who stood where no ordinary parent should, who moved with deadly precision, who carried her past in every bullet, every order, every breath. And then silence, sudden, shattering. The gunfire stopped. The dust settled in slow, heavy swirls. Shadows moved in the distance, retreating, slipping away like wolves denied their prey. The SEALs held their positions, weapons still raised, but the storm had broken. For now. Sarah rose from cover, pistol still in her grip, chest heaving with controlled breaths. She scanned the street once, twice, making sure. Then she holstered the weapon, her hand lingering for just a second longer than necessary. Her daughter stared wide-eyed, unable to move. The SEALs regrouped quickly, pulling the wounded inside the vehicle, dragging spare ammo crates closer, radios buzzing. But every glance cut toward Sarah. Every nod carried more than respect, it carried relief. One of them, the lieutenant from before, approached her. His voice was rough, half broken from the fight. "Falcon, you still fly." Her mother's eyes flicked to him, unreadable. "I walk now, that has to be enough." The girl swallowed hard. Falcon, that name again. A name she only knew in whispers. Now it hung heavy, undeniable, carved into reality with every bullet fired. Sarah finally climbed back into the truck. Her daughter shrank slightly as the door shut, sealing them away from the world's noise. For a long moment, neither spoke. Her mother's hands were stained with dirt and blood, her jacket torn, her face streaked with sweat. But her eyes were sharp as steel, alive in a way the girl had never seen at home. The silence pressed until the girl broke it, her voice trembling. "That was you, all along. You weren't just a SEAL, you were something more." Sarah looked at her, not cold, not unkind, but with a weight that pressed harder than words. "I was someone who lived through things you'll never read in books, someone who saw too much, lost too much." Her throat tightened, the words slipping rough. "I never wanted you to see it, not like this." The girl blinked back, tears, fists clenching. "But now I have." Her mother held her gaze, then nodded just once. Outside, the trucks roared back to life, soldiers climbing in, radios still hissing with fragmented codes. But inside, the girl sat caught between pride and terror, between awe and grief. Because the truth had come, louder than laughter, sharper than denial. Her mother wasn't just who she said she was more. And if enemies had followed her this far, then shadows weren't done reaching for them. Why did silence feel heavier than the gunfire? The convoy rumbled across the outskirts of the city, dust curling in the fading light. The girl sat pressed against the cold metal wall of the armored truck, her mother across from her, eyes forward, jaw locked. Sarah Donovan hadn't said a word since the firefight ended. The soldiers spoke in clipped bursts over radios, trading codes and coordinates. But inside, the silence stretched, suffocating. The girl's hands trembled in her lap. Every sound replayed in her head, the crack of rifles, the cries of the wounded, the steady, unshaken commands her mother had given. She had seen things no child should see, yet what unsettled her most was not the violence itself, but how effortlessly her mother had moved through it. She wanted to ask questions, wanted to demand answers, but her mother's face, calm, unreadable, made her words die before they formed. The convoy finally slowed, turning onto a gravel path that wound through hills and pines. At the end stood a house, plain, dark, its windows shuttered, its walls weathered but solid. A safe house. The trucks parked in a tight circle. Soldiers disembarked, sweeping the perimeter, rifles up. Only when the lead operator gave a sharp nod did Sarah move. She stood, offered her hand to her daughter. "Come." Her voice was quiet, firm, no room for argument. The girl took it, stepping down into the cooling air. The pine needles crunched under her boots. She glanced at the house, then at the soldiers moving with choreographed precision, setting up watch. None of them looked surprised to see her mother step forward, to hear her give quiet orders about where to station, how to secure the windows, when to rotate shifts. They listened without question. The girl felt it again, that strange pull, that realization that her mother wasn't simply one of them. She was something they followed. Inside, the house smelled of dust and old wood, sparse furniture, a table, a couch, a single lamp. It wasn't meant for living, it was meant for waiting. Her mother guided her to the couch. "Stay here." The girl obeyed, though her chest burned with unasked questions. She watched Sarah strip off her jacket, roll up her sleeves, and kneel by a soldier who had taken a bullet through the arm. Her movements were steady, practiced, almost clinical. She tied a tourniquet, checked the wound, gave instructions to another operator who hovered nearby. The men deferred to her. Their eyes lingered with respect, sometimes even relief, as if her presence alone steadied them. The girl hugged her knees to her chest. Pride swelled, yes, but so did fear. If this was her mother, if this was who she truly was, then what else had she buried? Hours passed. The sun dipped, shadows thickened. The soldiers rotated their posts outside, the low murmur of radios seeping through cracked windows. Inside, the lamp cast a faint golden circle around the room. The girl dozed, half awake, when she heard two of the men talking quietly near the doorway. "Didn't think we'd ever see Falcon again," one muttered. "Yeah," the other replied, his voice hushed with something close to awe. "Last I heard, she walked after Iron Vortex. Couldn't blame her. That op chewed everyone alive." "Chewed," the first echoed, shaking his head. "She still pulled 3 of ours out, flew in under fire when command had already written them off." The girl's eyes flicked open, her chest tightened. She listened, heart hammering. "You think she'll stay this time?" The second soldier sighed. "Doesn't matter what I think. The fight's already followed her home." Their voices trailed off as they moved down the hall, but the words remained heavy and sharp. Falcon, Iron Vortex, stories she had never been told, scars her mother had never explained. She sat up, staring at her mother across the room. Sarah was cleaning her sidearm now, hands steady, expression blank. The girl's voice broke the silence. "What was Iron Vortex?" Her mother didn't look up. "A mistake." The girl's chest tightened. "They said you saved them." Sarah's hands paused just briefly before resuming. "Not enough of them." The girl swallowed. The weight in her mother's tone said more than the words. Pain wrapped in restraint. Ghosts walking just behind her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me?" the girl whispered. Finally, Sarah looked at her. Her gaze was sharp but not cruel. "Because stories like that don't belong to family dinners. They don't help you sleep at night. They don't make you proud, they make you bleed." Tears stung the girl's eyes. "But it's who you are." Her mother's jaw clenched. "It's who I was, who I tried not to be anymore." The room was still. The only sound was the faint click of metal as Sarah slid the weapon back into its holster. The girl hugged her knees tighter, words caught in her throat. For years she had wanted her mother to be extraordinary. For years she had begged silently for proof. Now, sitting in this dim safe house with soldiers circling outside, she realized the truth was far more complicated. Extraordinary came with a cost, and her mother had carried that cost in silence. The night deepened. One by one, the soldiers settled into rotations of sleep and watch, their heavy boots marking the wooden floor. Sarah sat by the window, eyes scanning the dark trees beyond. The girl drifted between wakefulness and restless dreams. But every time she opened her eyes, she saw her mother there, still, vigilant, carved from shadows and patience. And every time, she wondered the same thing. How much of her mother's past would she have to face before it swallowed both of them whole? Why did danger always find them, even in silence? The house creaked with night. Pines whispered outside, bending in the wind. Inside, the air was heavy, tense. The girl lay on the couch, half asleep, her thoughts a storm she couldn't calm. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the firefight again. The muzzle flashes, the shouts, her mother unflinching in the fire. She stirred at the faintest sound, a whisper of static from the radio, sharper than before. One of the operators stiffened, pressing a hand to his earpiece. Movement 200 meters out, multiple contacts. The words sliced her drowsiness to nothing. She sat upright, heart hammering. Her mother was already moving. Sarah rose from her chair, boots soundless on the wood floor. She didn't flinch, didn't hesitate, just nodded once. Positions. The men shifted instantly. 2 slipped out the back, Another climbed the stairs to take high ground. The house transformed from shelter to stronghold in a matter of seconds. The girl gripped the edge of the couch, breath shallow. They found us. Sarah crouched beside her, voice low, steady. They always find you if they want it badly enough. The girl's chest tightened. Who are they? Sarah's eyes held hers, unblinking. For the first time, her voice carried no shields, no softening. The kind of men who will erase anyone who stands in their way. Years ago, I stood in their way, and they don't forget. The girl swallowed hard. Fear pricked her skin, but so did something else, an ache of understanding. This wasn't about accidents. This wasn't random. This was the cost of her mother's truth. A sharp knock rattled the front door, not polite, not hesitant, heavy, demanding. The girl flinched. One soldier raised his weapon, another shook his head. No friendlies would knock. The radio crackled again, garbled voices, coded chatter. The lieutenant's voice cut through. They're probing, trying to spook us. Hold. The knock came again, harder, then silence. The girl pressed closer to her mother, whispering, "What do they want?" Sarah's jaw tightened. "Me." The word sank like stone in water. The girl's throat closed. She wanted to argue, to deny it, but deep down she already knew. This was never about her. It was always about her mother, Falcon. Another sound split the night, not knocking this time, glass shattering upstairs. Shouts erupted, gunfire followed, the house shook with chaos. Sarah grabbed her daughter's hand, pulling her down low, moving fast through the hall. Her voice was a razor through the noise. "Stay with me. Don't let go." The girl's legs burned, her chest heaved, but she clung to her mother's grip like it was life itself. Soldiers shouted, boots thundered, bullets cracked against wood. The safe house was no longer safe. It was breaking apart around them. Sarah shoved her daughter into a small storage room, pressing her back against the wall. She crouched eye level, her face hard but her tone almost gentle. "Listen, you stay here until I come back. You hear me?" The girl's head shook violently. "No, don't leave me." Her mother's hands gripped her shoulders firm. "You trust me. Always say it." Tears blurred her eyes, but she choked out, "I trust you." Sarah's expression softened, just for a breath, just for her. Then the steel returned. She pressed a pistol into her daughter's trembling hands. Not heavy caliber, not military issue. A compact sidearm she had kept hidden in her jacket. The girl stared at it, horrified. I can't." "You don't have to use it," Sarah cut in. "Just hold it, just know you have it. And remember, courage doesn't mean no fear. It means standing even when fear is there." The girl's chest cracked open with emotion. Pride, terror, love, all tangled. She nodded, gripping the weapon though her hands shook violently. Her mother brushed a strand of hair back from her face, an intimacy, tender and fleeting. Then Sarah slipped out the door, shutting it softly behind her. The girl sat in the dark, heart pounding, pistol cold in her palms. Gunfire roared through the house. Shouts rattled the walls. She pressed herself back, fighting the urge to scream, to run. Every second stretched into eternity. But in the chaos she heard her mother's voice. Calm, commanding, carving order from fire. "Left flank push now. Hold the stairwell, don't let them breach. Cover him, move." The soldiers obeyed. She could hear it, the difference her mother made. She wasn't just another fighter. She was gravity. She was center. And then silence again, not peace. The sharp, deadly silence of a pause in the storm. The storage room door cracked open. The girl gasped, raising the pistol clumsily with both hands, only to see her mother there. Dirt streaked her face, her hair damp with sweat, but her eyes still held that unshaken fire. Sarah crouched, her voice soft. "You okay?" The girl nodded, breathless, lowering the weapon. Her mother reached out, steadying her trembling hands, sliding the pistol back into its holster. She didn't scold. She didn't patronize. She simply said, "Good, you held on." The girl's eyes filled. She whispered, "You're not just my mom, you're something more." Sarah's expression flickered, torn between pride and pain. "I'm still your mom, don't ever forget that." But the girl knew. She knew now what no ridicule, no laughter, no denial could erase. Her mother wasn't just Falcon. She wasn't just Sarah Donovan. She was both. And that truth, glorious, terrifying, unshakable, was now hers to carry, too. Outside, the soldiers regrouped, patching wounds, checking ammo. The lieutenant stepped into the hall, voice grim. "They'll be back, stronger." Sarah rose, jaw tight. "Then so will we." The girl stood too, her legs weak but her resolve burning brighter. For the first time, she didn't just feel like the daughter of a secret. She felt like the daughter of a fighter. And deep down she knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the next beginning. Why did her mother carry ghosts she never spoke of? The safe house was quiet again, but not with peace. It was the brittle quiet of men cleaning rifles, of boots packing across wooden floors, of radios whispering threats that pressed closer every hour. The girl sat at the kitchen table, staring at her reflection in a chipped glass of water. Her hand still trembled faintly, though she tried to hide it. Her mother leaned against the counter, arms crossed, eyes on the dark window, always watching, always ready. Finally, the girl's voice cracked the silence. What was iron vortex? The question hung in the air, sharp, unyielding. The seals nearby glanced up briefly, then lowered their eyes again. They knew better than to intrude, but even their silence carried weight, like men who had wondered the same thing once. Sarah didn't answer right away. Her jaw tightened, her eyes flicked with memory. For a moment, the girl thought she might refuse again. But then, slowly, her mother stepped closer, lowering herself into the chair across from her. "Iron vortex," Sarah said softly, "wasn't supposed to exist. It was an operation buried so deep even the brass denied it afterward. We went in blind, wrong maps, bad intel. We were outnumbered 10-1. Her daughter's throat tightened. "And you?" Sarah's gaze darkened. "I was in the air. They called me Falcon because I flew where no one else would, down through missile trails, through walls of fire. I had men on the ground, cut off, surrounded. Command ordered retreat." Her voice caught for the first time, sharp and raw. "I didn't retreat." The girl held her breath. "I dove into that storm, kept the sky alive with fire until I burned through every last round. I pulled 3 men out who should have died that night, but 20 more never made it home." Silence fell, heavy, crushing. Her mother's hands curled into fists on the table. "They called it valor, gave me medals, but the truth," she shook her head, eyes fixed on a point far away. "The truth is I disobeyed orders, I gambled lives, and every man I couldn't save, every face, I still carry." The girl's eyes stung. She whispered, "But you saved some." Sarah's gaze lifted to hers, sharp, pained. "And lost more. That's the weight they don't tell you about. The ghosts don't leave." The girl blinked hard, swallowing the knot in her throat. For years she had begged for proof her mother was extraordinary. Now she had it, and it wasn't the shining glory she imagined. It was heavier, darker. She reached across the table, her hand brushing her mother. "You did what you had to." For a moment, Sarah's face softened. A flicker of warmth broke through the steel. She squeezed her daughter's hand once firmly, then released it. Before either could speak again, the lieutenant entered, face grave. "They're regrouping. Scouts report heavier weapons moving in. We've got hours at most." Sarah rose instantly, mask sliding back into place. "Then we prepare." The men nodded, scattering to their stations. The house filled with motion, rifles checked, barricades reinforced, comms set on repeat cycles. The girl stood too, her chest tight. "What about me?" Sarah turned, her eyes narrowing. "You stay low, you stay alive." But something inside the girl sparked, a defiance she hadn't felt before. "I'm not just baggage. I'm not just someone you hide away." Her mother's expression froze. For a long beat, neither moved. Then Sarah stepped closer, her voice low, cutting. "You are my daughter. That makes you everything. And if keeping you alive means hiding you behind walls, then so be it. The girl's throat burned. She wanted to argue, wanted to scream. But in her mother's eyes she saw it, the raw fear buried under all the steel, the fear of losing her. Her anger softened, but it didn't vanish. She whispered, "You always carried it alone. Don't make me believe I can't carry any of it too." The words lingered. Sarah's jaw worked, her eyes locked on her daughter's. Something shifted just slightly. She didn't reply. She only turned away, her silence saying more than words. Night pressed in. The safe house was cloaked in shadow, every window darkened, every breath held. The girl sat in her room, pistol on the floor beside her, listening to the faint hum of radios and the packing boots of soldiers outside her door. But through the fear, she felt something new burning inside. Pride, not the childish pride of wanting to prove her classmates wrong, not the shallow pride of being able to say her mother was extraordinary, but a deeper pride, painful, weighty, the pride of knowing her mother's strength had been carved in fire, and that she too bore the same blood. She clenched her fist, whispering to herself, "I'm not baggage." And for the first time, she believed it. Why did courage look so quiet in the moments before the storm? The safe house sat under a moonless sky, wrapped in darkness so thick it pressed against the windows. The soldiers waited, weapons ready, breath shallow. Radios whispered static. No laughter, no chatter, only silence, the kind that comes when everyone knows what's coming but no one knows if they'll see the other side. The girl sat on the floor beside her mother. The pistol Sarah had given her lay across her lap, heavier than iron, heavier than the truth itself. She hadn't let go of it since. Her mother checked her rifle one last time. Her movements were precise, unhurried. She wasn't shaking. She wasn't flinching. She was steady, as though calm could be built even in the shadow of chaos. The girl broke the silence, her voice low. "Mom, what if they get through?" Sarah turned her head, studying her. For a moment the mask slipped, and her eyes softened with something fierce and unspoken. "Then we make every second cost them." The words sent a chill through the girl. But beneath the fear something else stirred, an ember of strength, fragile but alive. The lieutenant entered the room, face pale but resolute. "They're close. 10 minutes, maybe less." Sarah rose, slinging the rifle over her shoulder. She gave the men orders in clipped phrases, dividing them into positions, her voice a steady anchor. They moved without hesitation, like gravity bound to her will. The girl watched, chest tightening with awe and fear. Her mother wasn't pretending anymore. She wasn't hiding. She was Falcon again. The first crack came sharp, glass shattering in the distance, followed by the dull thud of boots pressing into soil. Then another sound, the metallic growl of engines. They hadn't just come with rifles this time. They had come with machines. The safe house walls trembled. The men tensed, rifles raised. Sarah crouched to her daughter's level, gripping her shoulders. Her voice was low, urgent, but steady. "You remember what I told you. Stay low, stay alive. You don't have to fight, but if they break through," she glanced at the pistol, then back at her daughter, "you do what you must." Tears threatened, but the girl blinked them back. She nodded, whispering, "I'm not baggage." Sarah's jaw tightened. For a heartbeat, pride flickered across her face. She pressed her forehead gently to her daughter's, a rare intimacy carved out of chaos. "No, you're my blood, don't forget that." And then she was gone, slipping into the dark halls where men waited with rifles, where death pressed at the walls. The girl curled into the corner, pistol in her hands, her pulse thundering in her ears. Every second stretched like eternity. She wanted to scream, wanted to run, but she stayed. She stayed because her mother's voice echoed inside her. "Strength isn't what they see. It's what you hold when no one believes in you." The assault came like thunder. Explosions ripped through the yard. Walls shook. Shouts erupted, gunfire cracking so loud it rattled the floorboards. The girl clamped her hands over her ears, but the pistol stayed in her grip, always in her grip. She could hear her mother's voice cutting through the storm. Orders, commands, steady, unbreakable, the falcon in full flight. The fight raged. The house groaned under fire. Men fell, cried out, were dragged back into shadows. But the line held, thin and fraying, because Sarah Donovan held it. Minutes or hours, she couldn't tell, bled into one another. The girl lost count of shots, lost count of screams. Her throat was raw with silence, her body stiff with fear. Then the door to her room burst open. She gasped, jerking the pistol up. A shadow filled the frame, tall, armed, eyes wild. The intruder lunged. Her finger froze on the trigger, every muscle screamed. The world shrank to a breath, a heartbeat. Then a gunshot split the air. Not hers. The man collapsed at the doorway, his body falling heavy to the floor. Behind him stood her mother, rifle raised, smoke curling from the barrel. Sarah's eyes swept her daughter, still alive, pistol clutched tight, trembling but unbroken. Relief softened her expression just for a second. Then she pulled the body out of the way, reloaded, and pressed forward again, back into the storm. The girl's lungs heaved, tears burning down her cheeks. She hadn't fired, but she hadn't let go either. And maybe that was enough. The battle stretched until the night bled into gray dawn. Slowly, finally, the gunfire thinned. Shouts grew distant. Engines roared in retreat. And then silence. This silence was different. This was the silence of survival. The safe house was torn, windows shattered, walls scarred with bullet holes, the floor stained, but it still stood, and so did they. The girl stumbled into the hallway, her legs weak, her ears still ringing. She saw the soldiers, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. And there, standing among them, dirt-streaked and unbowed, was her mother. Sarah Donovan, Falcon. Their eyes met. For a moment, nothing else existed. The girl walked to her, trembling, and Sarah pulled her close, one arm wrapping her tight. The daughter pressed her face against her mother's shoulder, whispering through tears, "They'll believe me now. Everyone. They'll know you were real." Her mother held her, voice low, steady. "It doesn't matter if they believe. It only matters that you do." The girl pulled back, searching her mother's eyes. "I do." Sarah brushed a hand against her cheek, pride and sorrow woven together. "Then that's enough." The sun rose slowly, casting pale light through the broken walls. The soldiers gathered what remained, their faces hollow but alive. The lieutenant approached Sarah, his voice hoarse. "We'll be moving out soon, but if you stay in the shadows again, they'll find you. You know that." Sarah's gaze lingered on her daughter, then back at the lieutenant. Her voice was calm. "They already found me, but she knows the truth now. That's all that matters." The girl tightened her grip on her mother's hand. She didn't feel like baggage anymore. She didn't feel like a liar. She felt like a daughter of blood, of resilience, of quiet strength. And as they stepped into the pale morning together, the lesson carved itself deep into her heart. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It doesn't argue. It doesn't beg to be believed. Sometimes dignity simply acts and lets the world see for itself.